Hello and welcome. My name is Alexander Huzar. I'm the marketing operations manager in FlexPay. This is actually my second attempt to record this video. The first one, I rambled, so I realized I needed to be more concise and to the point. So I'll try to make this one shorter. The last one was 2 hours. So what is this video? This video is about Eloqua CDO-based integration, and I will do a complete end-to-end walkthrough with explanation, the theory, and step by step. I'll open up the configurations. You can shamelessly copy and paste it to your heart's content, so you can walk away and do your own thing or your own version of it. You do you. Um, so who am I? Well, I've already announced who I am, but in terms of my history, I have been around. My foray into marketing automation really started when I got hired by Oracle. It was actually Eloqua at the time, but by the time all the paperwork was signed, I was one of the first people with an Oracle paycheck rather than an Eloqua paycheck. I went through the support team, and then within 9 months, I was on the escalations team, and then working with all the difficult cases and the account escalations. And I needed to know what all the different buttons in Eloqua do, and eventually pretty much learned all of them. So I got to learn the product really inside and out. And beyond that, I worked with people like Nelson Ng. He was the PM for Inside, aka Eloqua reporting at the time, and he set up collaborations with other developers to delve deeper into why Eloqua was creating the associations it was that was driving the results we were seeing and reporting. And by understanding that, I feel like for me, that was the most valuable learning that I had while I was at Oracle. A lot of the stuff sits in the minds of the programmers and the developers at Oracle, doesn't make it into documentation, unfortunately, and nuances specifically. You are a cookied visitor. You do some activities, Alico calls the digital body language. And then at some point, that cookied visitor is converted into a contact through a form submit or other means. There are more than one mean, by the way. So when that happens, how far back do you go to grab the activities that were performed by the cookie and then reassociate to the contact? There is a finite limit that we discovered. It's not infinite. It's not like you can go 2 years back and look at what the cookie did and then associate that. So there is a finite limit, and stuff like that that's not in documentation was really interesting. That helped me understand Eloqua fundamentally. And I use that knowledge to do what I do even today. Um, so anyway, I went from Oracle to Ceridian. I took my ideas, I developed CDO-based integration for Ceridian. Really innovated there. Let my creative juices flow. Did some great stuff. Left after a while. Followed my friend to Coveo. Realized that wasn't for me. Went to OpenText. They had a really challenging requirements. Had acquisitions. It's pretty much the Canadian equivalent of Oracle. Um, met friends. Dennis Lund, hi. There's others as well. Sorry for forgetting your names. You guys still have a lot of work to do at OpenText. I wish you all the best. It's not easy. Every year you get a new major acquisition, and they all come with their own marketing automation platforms you have to integrate. So that's always a challenge. Anyway, I'm finally settled on FlexPay. I met lovely people here, like-minded, critical thinkers, all of them. Our HR person is absolutely wonderful. Bailey, thank you for putting together a team that just gels together. Like, it's rare to find a company where the whole company is on a certain wavelength. And with ethics. So that's really rare. That's why I'm sticking here. Anyway, so I took all my knowledge. I'm finally here, build up CDO-based integration, and I'm using my position to help the community at large. Because one of the reasons why I'm trying to make this video is because I don't see a lot of activity in the Eloqua space as it used to be. Topliners was really active. Now it's, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not really active anymore. It's been Oracleified and it's become really obtuse and hard to find. If I just want Eloquent and I don't want other things, it's unfortunate because AI is pushed on you and other things are pushed on you, and no matter how many times they say I don't want it, they still force you to at least consider it. So that's unfortunate, and that stifles the community that used to be, aka top liners, where all the knowledge was shared. People used to help one another. So my aim with this video is for anybody watching to go home and be able to do CDO-based integration, or at least understand the theory. Okay. So what I'm going to be sharing today is nothing proprietary. I'm doing this again because I shared someone's email address and I shouldn't have, so that is no longer here. But what you're seeing here is one of two programs that I'll be sharing today. This is the first one. This is called System 1.0. You can call it System 1, whatever. This is the main integration intake. This is where contacts enter that then through filtering either do or don't get associated with a campaign. And then for those that do have a campaign association, they move on to this program. This is running CDO records. I call it GCS, or Global Campaign Store. So this is where we're actually going to be creating campaign members from. So I'll go over all of this. So just to backtrack a little bit, what is CDO-based integration? Um, CDO-based integration is something that you do custom that isn't out of the box, because out of the box, Eloqua asks you to use something called response rules. They're found here under settings, response rules. So CDO-based integration uses a custom CDO to store activities or responses, however you want to call it, performed by people that then are to be represented in your CRM as campaign members. And you do that through a custom CDO that you then run Program Builder against to then push through integration out into your CRM. Now, I need to talk a little bit about the out of the box integration so that you understand why I'm not using it. So I'm just going to read off some of my notes here. Why don't you use Eloqua out of the box integration, or Marketo out of the box, or whatever? I'll talk about Marketo and part on others in a second. But number one is that there are multiple limitations, right? So the devil's always in the details. There are limitations. Eloqua tries to make the act of creating campaign members easy, but in reality, the process is mostly obfuscated and can only be done in a very specific way, and only when things go right. So this is similar to most people have iPhones. I don't. I'm an Android person, but my wife does, and she asked me one day. I backed up my iPhone to this computer. I also need to back it up onto my laptop because I use that as well. And as soon as you like, if you use iTunes to do the backup through the USB cable, and as soon as you try to back up your iPhone to another computer, it says, "Hey, you must format it because I don't know this device." So it's kind of, I feel about Eloqua out of the box integration the same way I feel about Apple allowing you to, or not allowing you to back up devices on multiple computers at the same time. It's baffling. I understand why. I understand their reasons why they did what they did. Um, there's a saying though, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So let me expand on that. So one of the reasons or one of the limitations with the response rules in Eloqua is that it forces you to build a flat or static hierarchy of responses, and you can't build out a matrix of responses by campaign type. So if you have like I don't know, registered and attended uh, for, let's say, a webinar, one is of lower priority than the other. The attended is a higher priority than the registered, right? But let's say you have a trade show and then you have an attended. So in theory, everybody attends a trade show, right? Because you walk in the door, there you go, you're attended. That could be the default. But then if you're registered, registered could be like you're at the trade show and you registered to do something else, or whatever that might be, a special speaker thing, or dinner, or presentation, whatever it might be. So in that scenario, you might want that to be of a higher priority. The problem is with the response rules with Eloqua, Marketo, Pardot, they're all the same, is that they force you to create a static hierarchy of responses, and you can't change it up by campaign type. So that's another reason. Next is, and I'll talk about when in Eloqua. So Eloqua campaign association is a specific term, and what I mean by that is I'm going to open up a new window and I'm going to look up my contact. When you open up your contact or any contact, the campaigns tab on a contact, rows on here, there's nothing in here, but if you pretend there are rows that are on here represent what Eloqua understands to be response rule hits that then create an association to a specific campaign. So when I say campaign association, I mean Eloqua campaign association, things that show up on the campaigns tab, right? So for the people that are linked to a campaign by having an Eloqua campaign association, I'm not aware of a way where you can report on that. Like there in Insight, you can report on things like by campaign, sure, these are all the people that have submitted a form or opened an email, blah, 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 blah. But those are not necessarily things that triggered a response rule to drive an Eloqua campaign association. So you can't create a report. And again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the standard ones that I've always worked with, they don't allow you to do that. So if you need to report to your, I don't know, director, VP, or whomever, how many Eloqua campaign associations we got, you don't have a good way of getting that result other than going one by one, clicking on the campaigns tab and seeing if something shows up. And by the way, it takes you, you have to wait 5 minutes past the hour to see what it shows up. I'm going to quickly pause the video and show you the interface of what it looks like, just so that you understand what actually drives this. Okay, so I have the Eloqua 9 interface for campaigns that is accessible through I mean, they used to call it a hack link. I don't know if they still do. Anyway, from the Eloqua 9 campaigns interface, and if you know how to get there, you know how to get there. I'm not going to share how. There's a thing called campaign process history. The campaign process history is the thing that runs 5 minutes past the hour, roughly. As you can see, it's not exactly 5 minutes past the hour. It's like a little bit off. And then you have a button down in the bottom right called Process Now that if you want to run the campaign association earlier than 5 minutes, you can click this button. Half the people that I talked to said things will explode in a nuclear fireball if you click this, and half the people said nothing will happen and it'll work just fine. But nonetheless, this is the back end process that runs that says everything that's a response rule, everything that people did, do a Venn diagram, and everybody that's in the middle of the Venn diagram now has a campaign, an Eloqua campaign association to it. So this is the engine that does that. This is the engine that stitches together the response rules with things that actually people did. So I don't have any response rules, but if I did, it would look something like this. It would be form submit. I'm not using an internal queue, so I don't care about this. Uh, Whatever. So if I have this configured and there's a form submit, so these are all default things. The external activity is something else I'll get to in a second. But any form submit, if performed, if that form is linked to a campaign, that will then, through this process, show up on that contact's campaigns tab and be linked to the campaign that that form is linked to. You will run into challenges when one form is linked to multiple campaigns. So in order to steer, I don't know, I don't have a better word for it. In order to steer how response rules associate to one campaign versus another, that is where experience comes in. That's where you start talking about um, when an Eloqua campaign sends an email, those emails all have hyperlinks, hyperlink query strings at the end, specifically the ELQ equals, that code is an intermediate lookup table between the campaign and the specific send date and time of that email. So if you send the same email 2 times, you will get a different GUID code for the value of the ELQ equals query string. And when that is loaded into the URL, that tells the Eloqua server that uh, this web page was clicked uh, or was accessed by clicking that specific hyperlink sent to that specific email at this specific time to this person. When there's a form in that landing page, when submitted, Eloqua knows that this form was submitted because it was on this landing page, and this landing page was loaded with that specific query string value, the ELQ equals whatever. And because that was generated by a specific campaign, that is one of the ways where you can steer that form to be associated to one campaign versus another. So if two different campaigns send uh, two different emails, depending on which one you click on, depending on what code value you have for the ELQ equals query string, that is how you'll then be able to steer the form submit to one campaign or another. Um, and that's how you can help with response rules. I don't know where that's written in documentation. I don't remember reading it. I remember being told about this, and I remember through trial and error figuring this out. It is unfortunate that that is something that's so fundamental to Eloqua and yet so obscure and also hard to diagnose because you have to wait until 5 minutes past the hour to see the result of your testing. I don't know about you, but if you're new and starting out a new job, how many opportunities do you have where your boss tells you, yeah, here you go, here's a week for you to play around and reverse engineer and figure out how the system works, and you're not going to get penalized for it. Like you, that doesn't happen. So that is one of the gripes that I have with the Eloqua out of the box integration. It's this entire process related to response rules. It is not for the faint of heart, and I don't like it. Uh, Next, you can, instead of using these responses that Eloqua recognizes as digital body language, including email sent, you can have external activities. Now, external activities are a little bit more flexible because you can configure whatever you want. It just allows you to, the only thing, in my opinion, that allows you to do is go beyond the default digital body language options you have to go to pretty much an infinite number of different responses. But that's it. You're still bound by the exact same limitations. You're still bound by the fact that you need to steer into the correct campaign. You're still bound by the fact that, oh, here's a good one. Um, for response rules to create an Eloqua campaign association, when, for example, you're using external activity, that external activity comes with a date. So the dates that which you do external activity. So two ways to create external activity. You can upload into a campaign or on a campaign canvas. Yeah, so upload external activity. So here's the thing. You can select the file that you want to upload. Um, the second way is on a campaign canvas itself. You can where is this external activity? There we go. So you can flow someone through an external activity step, and you can invoke that association by configuring whatever you want here, the type, and then the activity for that type. Whatever the value is here, that's going to be the status value that will then correspond to the campaign member status value by the time the integration sends you out to Salesforce as a campaign member. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility, but the dates associated to the external activity must correspond to the dates during which the campaign was active. So you need to see the word not draft, not pause, not deactivated, not completed. It must be active. So if, for example, on Monday you activated it, on Tuesday you deactivate it, and then you upload external activities, against that campaign, if you then reactivate it on Wednesday, those external activities that you uploaded on Tuesday will not result in campaign association. They will be successfully uploaded into Eloqua. You will see external activities against the contact, but those external activities won't drive the response rules to create campaign associations. Why? Is because the date associated with those external activities doesn't match the dates during which the campaign was active. So one campaign can have multiple periods during which it was active and then not active. Those date and times, and you need to be specific about the time zone too, that needs to coincide with an active period of an Eloqua campaign. Also consideration when you schedule a campaign and you have an end date, there's like a plus 6 month period during which it's still able to attribute things. That's valid, but not beyond that. So that's another obscure thing that I don't know if documentation has been updated, probably not, that you learn about the hard way, probably through creating a support ticket and product working as designed. Then you're frustrated, then you learn something, and then you can't go back retroactively to fix it. So your boss just tells you just manually create the campaign members in Salesforce bypassing Eloqua. That's usually what ends up happening for 90% of these situations. So yeah, so that's another thing. Um, you can't retroactive. So once something is listed here as a row item for a campaign association in Eloqua, you can't retroactively go back and update or delete it. You can upgrade the status of that campaign member because if you recall that uh, response rules, they have a top-down hierarchy of different things. So you can configure, let's say, a form submit. You can configure uh, email click-through, and then you can the ones at the top get the highest priority. So if you first do a click-through and then you do a form submit, that'll get upgraded. That's fine, but you still need to do that. Now, other things you can't do is you can't, for example, if you collect UTM source, UTM medium, UTM campaign as additional drivers. So let's say you put out a form somewhere and you have like LinkedIn, other social media driving people to that landing page with the form. Those hyperlinks that you put out there are hard coded with different UTM values, so you can track what's driving those things. It would be nice if all of that were collected on the campaign member, but unfortunately, the only field, quote unquote, field that you're allowed with the out of the box Eloqua Campaign Association is what response rule you hit, and then the value is whatever it is. Everything after the dash is the value that you get. That's it. You can't add like an additional field like, oh, they submitted a form and the UTM source was this. You can't do that because there's no place for you to configure it. So that's another thing. Um, so okay, moving forward. So let's say you do have a contact with a campaign association because the response rules hit and everything was great and groovy and all that and everything worked out great. All right. So what do we do next? So we can't do anything from a campaign. So you need to have your main integration program, and your integration program that one sorry, I just sent my Roborock vacuum home. Um, okay, so you need to now send the Eloqua Campaign Associations out to Salesforce, and the outbound Eloqua to Salesforce integration is always like you need to trigger it. You need to find ways of triggering it. So whether that be through form processing steps on a form processing step, you say add to this main integration program, whatever it is. I have system 1.1 that I showed you previously, this one here. I have we have forms. You can see type form driving here. There's other ways, but however whatever does this, whether it's a form submit or even click through, whatever you want to configure here, you need to figure out how to, as ideally as quickly as possible, to add them to a main integration program to run through. Now, for now, we're still focusing on the out of the box. So out of the box, you need to do this. The Salesforce campaign response integration. This is somewhere in the middle. This is not the first thing. Ideally, you want to make sure you at least have a lead or contact ID. So usually you would say, has contact ID. So contact ID. So Eloqua contact ID. So not blank. And I'm going to name this. So has contact ID. Okay. Or lead ID. All right. And then if not, then you do that. And then you would do something like that. Right. And just for the sake of showing best practices, right? This is what you should be doing. Maybe let's say, there you go. All right. Please write in the comments how I'm wrong about all of this. But anyway, this is the kind of like the main thing here. The key driver is this, right? So forget about all of this. What the focus is this particular step. In the ye old days, this used to be called the briefcase step. I'm going to quickly pause the video and create a briefcase step. Okay, so I just reused the old program just to show you what this is called. You'll notice the icon is of a briefcase with a little square blank canvas with a little rising bar chart of colors, green, yellow, or blue, green, yellow, orange, red, et cetera, et cetera. This is called a briefcase step, and the briefcase step is send campaign information to CRM system. In the ye old days, this send campaign information to CRM system would trigger under integration. If you go to outbound, under internal events, under campaign, the campaign association dash contact, this is the internal event that briefcase step would trigger. And again, I don't know where that is written, how you would learn it, but this is what it would trigger. And there used to be two external calls. When you have integration by default set up, you would have a couple of external calls, and they would uh, be a create action against the campaign member in Salesforce, and you would have a mapping with both the lead and the contact ID, as well as the status. The status gets pulled from the response rules status field, meaning that in the context of a campaign, what's the status that it should be sent over. Now, the one thing about both this Salesforce campaign response integration, because this is the new way, and the briefcase step is that when you have a contact running through this contact-based program, where then the contact goes through this step, all of the campaign associations in Eloqua that haven't yet been sent to Salesforce are attempted to be created, all of them. So if you have 100, 100 will be created or attempted to as a result of this. It just creates 100 instances of the external calls using the old system, or 100 new Salesforce API calls using the new app-based integration. However many haven't had returned the the campaign member ID to Eloqua that then tells Eloqua that integration was successful. Okay, so this is the thing that you must run context through in order to flush out from Eloqua into Salesforce or whatever CRM of your choice is, all of the Eloqua campaign associations that are created by contacts doing activities that then trigger response rules. Okay, so then what does this actually do? Let's go take a look. In your Salesforce integration, or if you have Microsoft Dynamics, Godspeed to you. Under campaigns, you have response actions. I don't have response actions because I don't use it, but this is what it is. So I'm going to configure one. So campaign member is your target object. If it's not, you can do other things too. You can maybe think out of the box and use that particular step that I showed you on the campaign canvas, the new version of the briefcase step to do things that you know, again, thinking out of the box, but thinking within the box, you do campaign member as your target object. The first gripe I have with this little arrow here that says integration return value, right arrow to campaign member ID. I think this arrow should be pointing the other way because that's the flow of the data. So yes, this is going to create an API call into Salesforce that says map all the fields on the left, which are the Eloqua fields, to all the fields that are on the right, that are the Salesforce campaign member fields. But at the end of the call, Salesforce is going to have a message that says, yep, this is successful. And by the way, the campaign member ID is X. And then Eloqua grabs that and pushes it into this field here on the left, because initially it's blank. So this arrow, in my opinion, should be pointing to the left. So Tamina, Steven Strike, if you guys, have meetings with your developers, just a minor GUI fix, just flip this arrow 180 degrees, make it go left, because that's the actual direction of the data flow. The reason why this is not configurable, why this is grayed out, is because this is a backend system field. So if I go back to contacts, under campaign. So I don't have anything here, but you can imagine there's columns like a date, a campaign, a status, and then there's other additional hidden columns. One of those additional hidden columns is, did it successfully send to Salesforce? And this is one of those additional hidden fields. So by having a value that's the 18-character campaign member ID in this field being like a hidden column here in one of these rows, this tells Eloqua that it has flushed out that Eloqua campaign response out into Salesforce and doesn't need to do it again whenever you push a contact through the briefcase step again. That's what this does, right? So it's important to understand this because, again, I feel like documentation about this is obscure at best. Next, Eloqua status. The Eloqua status is, if we go back to response rules, everything after the dash, or in here, with external activities, it's not the type, it's the status of that type that's sent as a value. So the Eloqua status, that's the value. So if we do submitted for or form submit, the form space submit is the value that's going to be sent from the status field to the status field on the campaign member, right? If you do email click through, then it's not response dash email click through that's sent as a value. It's just email click through. If you have external activity webinar attended, it's not going to be webinar attended that's going to be sent. It's just going to be attended because the webinar is just a type. So if you're not sure, do trial and error against your test records, but that's just how it works. Okay. So that's the status that's going to be sent. And again, this is only stuff that actually has, once again, just because I want to drive this home, everything that you see on the campaigns tab as a contact and only this and nothing else. This is the only thing that will be considered for this mapping. Okay. Next, you're going to be mapping the contact ID to the contact ID on the campaign member, and the lead ID is lead ID. So the campaign member in Salesforce is an intermediate table between the campaign and the contact and or lead. So I don't want to get into what happens if you map both, if both have values, what happens to Salesforce versus splitting this up and having rules that say if it has a contact ID, only have a version of this that, for example, doesn't have this, it only has the contact ID, and then you have another version that just has the lead ID. You do you. Write down in the comments what you think will happen when you have a contact that's running through and this is being sent over to Salesforce, that where both a contact and a lead ID has a correct value. What happens? Write down in the comments what you guys think. Finally, the campaign ID. This is just to help steer the API call that this is mapping for. What is the campaign that will be the target of this? I'm going to call it an external call. I know they call it an action, but to me, it's So anyway, that's pretty much it. Data priority, this doesn't matter because you're not writing anything back. Like data priority is a whole nother subject. Nelson Ng had the idea of a tooltip. So if you, under your field details, if you hover over a value under any field, the idea was that there would be a tooltip that displayed something if this value was written with a data priority. So things that don't have data priority are if you go in there and you type ABC123 and you click save, this that I just wrote does not have data priority because the user interface actions don't apply a data priority. But if you do a list upload, as soon as you do an upload or integration, now all of a sudden you have to select an import source, which is tied to a tier of import data priority. That then does stamp a data priority to a field. So again, the idea was, Amina or Stephen, if you're listening, pretty please make the user interface better in that if you hover over a field that has a value, the hover text should display what is the data priority that's applied to the value in this field so that you don't have to guess. I don't know if there's a better way other than hover text, but right now there's nothing. You have to guess, and you can only do it by trial and error. You upload your spreadsheet or you import your API call or whatever, and then you see the results. If it's updated, then you know that it's either the same or greater. But if something failed to update and you notice that it failed to update, then well, I guess you're lower, and then you have no idea how much lower you are. So it's unfortunate. So pretty please do something with data priority to make it clear to people what is the actual applied data priority. Anyway, going back to this, that's pretty much it. So in summary, campaign ID targets the actual campaign. The status sends over the campaign member status, what you actually did. And then whether it's the contact or the lead or whatever combination, again, I asked you guys to comment below what you think it does. And then that's it. And then it's sent. And then that is how you get a campaign member in your CRM, in this case, Salesforce, from uh, a response rule hit that was looking for specific activities done by people. Um, and again, it's 5 minutes past the hour for response rules, and I showed you the thing that does this. This is Eloqua 9, very much Eloqua 9. Anyway, so that's how it's supposed to work. That's how you're supposed to get taught, and then you're told go off and do your thing. Um, again, very limiting, and that's why we don't do this. Now, some might say that, well, this seems very old and Eloqua hasn't innovated. I'm going to go with Marketo because I heard Marketo does things better. Let me share with you what I think about Marketo. This is a short summary. I typed this up in like 20 minutes when I was responding to someone earlier in the year about what I think of Marketo. There's probably lots of things that I'm forgetting. These are my gripes, some deal breakers. For anyone in Marketo / Adobe that's still listening, if you think I'm making this up, go and do a durable unsubscribe. So a durable unsubscribe means that when someone unsubscribes, that unsubscribe status persists until an explicit opt-in action occurs. So you create a contact, or it's called a person in Marketo, and then you set you set them to unsubscribed or opted out. I forget what it is. Then you delete them. Then when you recreate them, it doesn't matter. 30 seconds later or a day later, it doesn't matter because I tested both, just maybe in case the system needed more time. The durable unsubscribe says in their documentation, and I can open it up if you want. You know what? I'm going to do that just for to prove a point. Okay. You Google Marketo durable unsubscribe. First result, you get a page like this. Basically, on a Marketo person, aka contact record, aka just a person, just a record, there's a field called unsubscribe. That's a system field. You check the box, means yes, they're unsubscribed, right? You then delete the record and you recreate the record. That is supposed to persist, right? So this doesn't work, okay? When you recreate a person with the same email address that was previously unsubscribed before they were deleted, that newly created person, because it has a newer ID, doesn't have the unsubscribed flag. This only works if the person you're creating is a duplicate. The only thing that can create a duplicate record in Marketo is inbound CRM integration. I'm always used to Salesforce. So if in Salesforce you create a duplicate lead, that new duplicate lead comes into Eloqua, or sorry, into Marketo, um, then they will be unsubscribed. Why is because this comment in the bottom where Marketo actually does sync the unsubscribe save between all the duplicate records with the same email address. But that's the only time that works. When you just have one record, again, the durable unsubscribe is a GDPR requirement. Eloqua has this hidden feature. It's called the all-time global unsubscribe list, and that tracks people who have unsubscribed even through deletion. It doesn't cost a lot of resources, just text. You can have like 10 million records on it. It's going to be not that many kilobytes in size, so it doesn't consume a lot of resources. And yet, for whatever reason, Marketo doesn't do this. So again, for anybody in Marketo watching that you think I'm making stuff up, go test the gerbil unsubscribe. You have documentation for it, but it doesn't work. I've been asked multiple times. I've spoken to your reps. You guys have sent me a couple of mugs because I've spoken to two different people. Mugs are great, but you guys just don't listen, right? So I give up. You guys, you do you, right? And other things, I think there's a whole thing I have about Marketo integration, like multiple different sections. There's process. Anyway, point is that Marketo has bigger issues than Eloqua in terms of its ability to do integration reliably. Yes, you can do integration, but the devil is in the details, right? It's not until you actually do it that you understand that things don't work. You can't. There's race conditions. There's other things. I will say this in Marketo, the one thing I do like is that the person record, we call them contacts in Eloqua, the person record lists everything in the activity log. Every single thing. You get added to a list, you get removed from a list, you're created. Okay, by whom? Is it an API call? Okay, what was the user for the API call that was authorized? Okay, what were the fields and values during that was created? The date and time, everything. Everything under the sun is listed. Every time you flow through a campaign or whatever, when action steps on a smart campaign do something, each and every one of those things is listed. Sure, Eloqua has that to a point, but in Marketo, everything is listed. Uh, from there, you have the ability to create a filter. So you can say, uh, give me a list of contacts whose, let's say, uh, whatever field had this previous value before 3 months ago. You can do that because it then correlates that against the person activity log. And because everything there is listed, you can have field history because every single field's data value change is listed in the activity log. So that makes it pretty cool. So it's a simple way of doing something that's not in Eloqua. In Eloqua, you currently have up to 10 fields that you can monitor for changes, but you can only monitor changes. You can't set up filters that say, give me a list of people whose last name was Test 3 months ago or something like that. Or you can define a period. You can say th 3 months ago or further in the past or greater than 6 months ago. So you can target a window between 3 and 6 months. So it's pretty cool. You can do things like that. Other thing you can do, you can set up triggers. So you can set up triggers on pretty much everything. So if one person is created, if one person submits a form, if when a specific link on a specific email is clicked, that then sends a trigger. So that's the other thing that I like about Marketo. That's it. I don't like anything else about Marketo. So for anybody thinking that Marketo is a solution to where Eloqua's out of the box integration is behind, uh, I promise you it's not. You just need to understand the core fundamentals of both systems. To you need to understand what tools you're working with to understand what possibilities you have. I know both Marketo and Eloqua at an admin level inside and out, and it is of my opinion that Eloqua is far superior compared to Marketo, and Marketo's marketing claims in terms of its capabilities are objectively false. And I welcome you to challenge me on that. Here are some of my notes. Again, I start with a durable unsubscribe. You claim that your durable unsubscribe works. I prove to you that it doesn't. Your real-time integration isn't real time. It's 5 minutes at best. And I will bring up this link as well because this is also important to know for those thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. Um, if you start Marketo, if you have 1 million records, it can take you up to 2 weeks to for Marketo and Salesforce to finish syncing. If your account object is backlogged in integration, you can't sync anything else because that takes priority. Your contacts won't sync until your account sync because of Marketo's thing. Anyway, please read through this. This is a very important thing to understand. And even if you're not getting Marketo, if you're considering if you're doing vendor evaluations, you must know this to consider it. Um, every company, including HubSpot, has comparison charts that claims how they're better. And I remember seeing one of HubSpot's comparison charts that saying it's easier, it's faster, yada yada yada. It ticks every box. Eloqua only ticks one box. HubSpot takes all these other boxes. But for people know, the only three marketing automation platforms that are serious are Marketo, Eloqua, and Pardot. The other ones are not. So HubSpot and Soho CRM, I classify them as two minor players, and then everybody else is just an afterthought because they can't compete. So understand the tool that you have to work with. Um, and Sarah McNamara, if you're watching this, my gripe with you is that in every post you make, you pretend that Eloqua doesn't exist, and I take offense to that. Although, thank you for posting everything else. You're great otherwise. No hard feelings. It's just please acknowledge Eloqua. That's all I ask. Anyway, moving on. So now that we're done with the out of the box integration, and I'm going to show you why we don't do it. Just give me 1 second. Moving on. What are we actually trying to solve for with this custom CDO-based integration? So the objective here is to make sure that the activities performed in your context database are represented in Salesforce as campaign members. You want to have forensic level of auditing and control over your data, including the ability to edit and easily report on that. You want to make sure that the data generated in Eloqua isn't lost and makes it to your CRM. You want to build error control with automation and ability to monitor reports. One of the things I will show is I think I lovingly call MAC or Marketing Error Control Center. Jeremiah Rendillo, thank you for coming up with that name for it. This is basically a segment, and I have a combination of shared lists and filters that serve as a dashboard. And that's already in Jeremiah endeavor to turn these lists and filters into a Eloqua Insights dashboard that then daily we could review. Um, Common errors that we found was that when people are uploading lists of campaign responses into Eloqua, when you drag down the campaign ID, make sure you copy the cells, make sure you don't increment the number because incrementing the number guarantees nonsensical campaign IDs that then show up as errors. That's the most common thing that people kept on doing over and over and over. But anyway, yeah, you can build yourself a one-stop shop for your error control center, and every time you refresh, you see errors. Anything with a non-zero count is something of concern. I even have a looping counter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by having custom CDO-based integration, you can tie in exactly what you want into such a report. And finally, you want to have the ability by having this all in Canvas to configure with filters like junk or competitor or whatever. Um, whatever specific needs you have to your company, you can do that on a campaign canvas that you don't necessarily have the power to do that when it's just response rules. Um, maybe you want some campaign responses to go to some context, but not others. Maybe through lead scoring, maybe if someone hasn't achieved a certain lead score, you don't want them to become a campaign member to some campaign. I don't know. Depends on what you want. Maybe you segregate your audience based on geography or sales region or industry or whatever else. Like different companies have different needs, and based on those needs, you need to architect your flows and your routers, aka decision steps accordingly, right? So next thing I need to talk about is the limitations to CDO-based integration. Because nothing in life is free. Everything is always about pros and cons. So the first thing to keep in mind is that in Eloqua, all the CDO records combined have a soft limit of 20 million CDO records. So you look at all your CDOs and all of the CDO records, and I shouldn't show it, not yet. You add all that up, just it's 20 million. If you have, if you're primarily, let's say, a B2C company and you have lots of activities going on, lots of campaign associations, you're generating, I don't know, several thousand campaign responses per day. You can, in theory, quickly reach the 20 million CDO record cap. Um, you will have a conversation with your account director if you exceed that. At some point, they'll contact you and say, "Hey, cut it out, or else." Um, so there's ways to mitigate that. You can, for example, configure your GCS CDO, the thing that drives this. You can have a backend service program that says, anybody who is older than 12 months that has a return ID from Salesforce, meaning it's successfully sent over, just delete that. And it's safe to delete in Eloqua because you already have it in Salesforce. And in Salesforce, you don't have a limit on the number of records. You are charged for the processing that you do, not the number of records. So that's a consideration in the power of Salesforce. So there's ways to manage it. But that is the first limitation you need to keep in mind. Don't exceed the 20 million global CDO record in Eloqua. The next thing that is a limitation is the ability to configure closed loop reporting. So if I can remember correctly, under opportunity settings, in order to do closed loop reporting, you need to have this section configured. So you need to have your opportunity stages configured. You then need to sync your opportunities. The stages in here need to line up with the stages you have in Salesforce. Uh, the opportunities in Eloqua, let me see here, opportunity search. So the opportunity search is an interface to let you look for all of the opportunities in Eloqua, and this is a read-only table. So once it goes from Salesforce into Eloqua, it's baked in. It's like turning from dough into bread. Or like turning something into a PDF. It's one way and it's done. You can't modify it later. If I can recall correctly, even if you modify it in Salesforce and you sync it back into Eloqua, because it's already integrated once, you can't retroactively change it. I don't know if that's ever been fixed or not. But the only remedy to that is by filing a support ticket and then asking to nuke the entire opportunity table in Eloqua, and then you can redo it. I don't know if that breaks reporting or not, because let's say you already have reports based on the stuff that is in the opportunity table. If you then ask to nuke the table and you rebuild it, what happens to your reports? I don't know. I think they just say that let's have an unofficial disclaimer of, like a waiver of liability that you release them from liability of reports making sense if they do that. Point being is that I don't like the opportunity table in Eloqua. I don't use it. At FlexPay, we have our own. We um, we have our own opportunity table that we built. I use this, and then I can use segmentation. I can say context linked to accounts that are linked to opportunities where the opportunity field has X, you can do that. So I use this instead of the out of the box opportunity table. Um, Again, you need to have this set up in order to have CLR. So CLR is basically you have Eloqua contacts do activities against the campaign. You then send those campaign that as campaign members into Salesforce. From Salesforce, then you import uh, opportunities and other things back into Eloqua. And when that loop completes, you can build reports that tie in campaign responses and revenue. And so you can have ROI reports in Eloqua. Um, in my opinion, from everything that I've seen, this only works for the select companies where they build it, they don't touch anything for years, and it magically works, and it only works in a very specific way, and then you're locked into that way and you have no flexibility. Um, I wouldn't do this just out of those limitations, but if you change your configuration, the whole thing might work. So either way, just know that if you do CDO-based integration, CLR won't necessarily make sense. So I would say sacrifice CLR in your quest to do CDO-based integration and instead move your reporting into Salesforce. Um, Understand what reports you can get in Salesforce versus what reports you can get in Eloqua. In Eloqua, you can get activity-based reports on things that people have done, and then that's like at the wide end of the funnel. So if you imagine the integrated marketing sales funnel, the wider end of the funnel is Eloqua, and the narrower end of the funnel is what's in Salesforce. So you need to understand what question you're asking to then determine which report to run. If salespeople want to see um, how many people clicked on whatever, sure, but of what relevance is it to them? Are they gonna speak to people who clicked but that didn't generate enough of a like MCL to MQL threshold upgrade to then justify sending them through integration? So like those are the kinds of conversations you're gonna have with salespeople and other people asking those kinds of questions. So eh, different reports in Eloqua, different reports in Salesforce. Try not to conflate the two. And again, in my opinion, closed loop reporting is too much of a risk to do. Just do it in Salesforce. That's my advice, or do it in something like Informatica or Tableau or whatever other system. That's my recommendation. So yeah. Um, Next, so the next gripe that I might possibly have against CDO-based integration is the ease of use. So what I mean by that, you need to have a level of critical thinking mindset to understand the concept and the ability to visualize in multiple dimensions simultaneously to understand how the data flows. Um, from To me, anyway, the Eloquent out of the box is infinitely harder due to how black box it is. Like everything is behind the scenes. And again, in the effort to make it easy, they obfuscate what it does. Like specifically this, the campaign process history, the 5 minutes past the hour. This is the number one reason why it's harder for even me to work with the Eloqua out of the box than to just completely build something custom from the ground up, right? The last thing is the knowledge transfer. So whatever these programs are, so to us, this is the contact-based integration intake program, which then passes the link records that you create to the CDO-based integration program that actually flushes out and creates campaign members to contacts or leads. Um, this should be documented so that if the person administering this leaves, then it'll be easy to understand. Um, so that's the last thing, right? So we have so far covered in the first hour and 2 minutes uh, how you're supposed to do things, why things are the way that they are, um, cautions and things to know. And now we're going to move on in the next hour to how to actually do this. So now I'm just going to go step by step to how I actually do this. And I'm just going to pause for 1 second because I'm going to bring up a form because that's the start of everything. Okay, so this is a form from uh, March of this year. Now, these are standard fields. You can see how we built it, but how we actually create campaign associations is through here. Now, this is one of the ways to do it. Um, I choose to do it through a hard-coded step, and I do believe that this value should actually be in the description here for it to make sense. So anyway, standard stuff, we map the contacts, the contact fields to the contact record. That's fine. But this is what we do additionally. So every time this form is submitted, we say that we want this form to have this value written into the contact's last SFTC campaign ID. Into the contact's last SFTC campaign status, we put the value of submitted form and then the name. The name is kind of for humans. I have a way of having actually, I'll just show you right now what we do for that, why I'm not worried about the names. Again, nothing I'm showing you is proprietary. So two things we do. First thing, we sync the Salesforce uh, campaign. So we read from this and we write into the Eloqua pick list called Salesforce campaign ID to campaign name. Super simple. We just have the name and the campaign ID. This pick list is used to validate that the IDs that are running through Eloqua are real, and they're real because this import action creates entries that then only contain IDs that represent real existing values. So if you say your campaign ID on this contact field, if it's in this pick list, this one here, then you can go down the yes path, otherwise go down the no path, meaning that it's not recognized as being a real existing contact or sorry, campaign ID. Other things I have are campaign ID to campaign name. Uh, Again, very simple, campaign ID to campaign. This is a lookup table instead of a pick list. And then I have another one for campaign type. Now, why I have four instead of two is because there is a, I was told this is working as per design. Um, but you can't have a create or update. So for example, in here in the pick list, there's no like action type that it just maps. So if it doesn't exist, it creates it. And if it exists and it's different, then it just updates it. But for whatever reason, when we're talking about lookup tables, you have an action type. Again, this action type doesn't exist on the pick list import. And I was told that it's working as per design. So you need to have two steps. First, you need to create it, and then you need to have another one to update it. So it's normal for one of them to fail if, depending on when it's scheduled to run, if it comes into existence. So for example, uh, after this one runs, there's some delay, and then we do the update. We're trying to update something. So the update says, okay, give me all campaigns that have been updated since the last time it ran. Okay, it gives you a list, and it gives you a new one that didn't exist. This update fails to update an existing one because one doesn't exist. So this one fails. Then you need to wait until the next cycle for them to create it. And then the update one will have no work to do because the fields are different. So Tamina or Steven Strike, if you guys can work with the people that blessed us with the ability to create or update lookup tables, this action type should maybe have a third option that combines these two because this is cumbersome. I want it to work like this one does. This one doesn't have an action type. It just works like anything in Eloqua you create and or updates. That's the default import action type for everything, whether it's an API call or a list load. So it's kind of weird that I have to do something different for the lookup table import action using the action type. That's it. Anyway, but because I have this, I don't need to worry about the name. This is just so that I have it right the first time. I don't need to wait for it to run through an update rule that then leverages the lookup table that I'm updating through here, which by the way runs once an hour. Um, anyway, so this is what we do from the form. And then we also add to the System 1.1 integration intake program from here. So earlier in the first hour when I said that outbound Eloqua to Salesforce, aka CRM integration, is activity based. This is what I mean. This is an example of where I create I don't know how else to call it. An explicit action needs to take place to trigger outbound integration. This is that explicit action. On a form, on a processing step, I am explicitly adding to the integration program. Other ways you can do it are monitor for the condition that contacts have a non-blank value in these fields, and then once a day you can add them. Um, in the ye old days, you can have a priority-based program builder that every 5 minutes would run and evaluate for those people. Currently in program Canvas, your segments can evaluate at most once per day. That is too much of a delay. There's no other way around it. So I like to just immediately trigger adding to the integration intake whenever I'm also associating with a campaign by writing values here. Other things, sneak peek, another video I'm going to make is for the GDPR program. Um, I expanded these steps here. It looks really stretched out, but this is the GDPR program that we are using. I will make another video about this. You guys can shamelessly copy and paste everything. Um, but anyway, this is conditionally if the opt-in is exactly on. So if they explicitly opt in, I add them to the explicit opt-in step. Otherwise, if they don't, then they are stamped as implied consent. And implied consent does or does not give you an ability to send them emails based on country, which is another program. So anyway, so this is the start of how you associate someone to a campaign, right? This is through my way. The other way that I've done it at another company, I won't name the name, is we had other hidden fields. We had a concatenated field. So we had a concatenation of campaign ID dash email address, and I'll show you why that's really important. So we had JavaScript on the page concatenate the campaign ID and the status into a hidden field here, or we had hard coded. And then on the processing step, one thing we did, I'm going to add it but not save it, is update custom data object with form data. We did this. So the concatenated campaign ID dash email is always the thing that's the key field. And then we would have the source and the target be like the concatenated field, we would map it as well as we would map all the other stuff, including the campaign ID and whatnot. So what this step allows you to do is to make sure that in the event where you have multiple forms where different people can be clicking around different things, associating themselves to different assets really quickly, that when they don't flush through this main integration program in time being that, let's say they start here, and then by the time they're in the middle, they've already clicked on a different form. That different form can overwrite this with a different value. So before this manages through a step here to be written out to the GCS CDO, this is then overwritten. In that scenario, I do recommend that you have hidden fields that write directly to the whatever you call your campaign attribution custom object. I call it GCS. I recommend that from the form you directly write it to there. But the requirement is that you must have JavaScript that puts a concatenation value that you can then use as the key field. Because without that, you can't process the key field after the fact, right? You can't say, here's my campaign ID, here's my email address, do some processing, combine the two, and then that's the key field. You can't do that on the CDO. And you also can't use within one CDO, one record to then create another record with a different key field. I haven't found a way to do that yet. Maybe there is a way. As I'm speaking here, I think there is, but it's super convoluted. I don't recommend it. But point being is that this is a way to do it. Concatenate using JavaScript, have two other fields, one for campaign ID, one for status. With those three fields, you then write it in here. Key field to key field, the concatenation goes to the concatenation, campaign ID goes to campaign ID, campaign status goes to campaign status, and obviously you have the work email. So That is what I used to do in a previous company. I don't need to do that here because our volume doesn't justify doing this. The complexity required to add JavaScript for concatenation on every form on every page uh, is a non-zero effort, and we just have a different business model that doesn't need that. In the future, maybe that'll change, hopefully, but for now, we don't need it, so that's why we don't use it. But you might want to consider it. All right, so once a form submit takes place, it adds you to one of two steps. In my so I need to quickly explain the the program canvas here. In general, you have some an intakes, so it's three intakes. You have some checks and balances, junk records, competitors, CRM data get, blah blah blah, internal filtering, and then you have two main branches. The branch on the right kind of corresponds with this listener where we have legacy content generic without a campaign. So not campaign related stuff that people can do that we still want to have leads created for. And then the new stuff, which does have campaign associations. I use a shared list as a control to determine which way to route people. So based on if you're being added to this list that says campaign data as expected, on this step here, I then say that if you are on this list, go down to this path, which then has, excuse me, additional checks and balances, which then goes down this middle bottom path, which does associate to a campaign and does write to the global campaign store, aka GCS. But if you don't, if you're in the no path, meaning you're not on the list and the listener just force removes you for whatever reason, you're on it by the time you enter the program, you go down this no path and this matrix over here, I'll talk about that in a second, along with this branch on the right, this just creates a lead in Salesforce without a campaign membership. That's for our legacy stuff. Now, specific to FlexPay is that we use something called a POI style of lead creation. POI means point of interest. And our concept of leads is not that of like a Rolodex of people. We don't treat them as prospects. We treat our leads table in Salesforce as activities that people have done. Other companies that do this, for a fact I know, is Hewlett Packard. When I about 12 years ago for a different company called HP because I was asked to find large office enterprise grade, those big printers like 2 cubic meters squared that do like crazy amounts of printing and copying. We needed to find a lease printer because our Ricoh printer was absolutely terrible. Um, I didn't know what website to go to. I Google Hewlett Packard printers. Whatever the first result was, I clicked on that. I eventually found their support number and I called. Um, I got a call back from a lady, and she on the line with me was asking me, "Did you do this? Are you this? Yes, yes." And I quickly realized she was deduplicating my lead records. So that's how I know that they are using a point of interest style system rather than a unique. So unique means that you have leads in Salesforce that are unique on the email address. That's my Google Home asking me for stuff. Um, oh, right, because I used the word Google and I kept on talking. Uh, Anywho, so I know Hewlett Packard is a POI, so every time someone does something new, it creates a new duplicate lead by email address. We do the same thing because there's reasons for that. We want to make sure that leads represent activities that are then accounted for by sales reps by modifying the status of the lead. They are acknowledging that someone has done something. That's a more brute force way of doing things compared to other alternatives like assigning tasks or activities to the leads that you then need to action. There's reasons for it. It works for us, it might not work for you. Leave in the comments below what you think about that. Anyway, this matrix here on the right says that when you come in without a campaign association, take a look at your POI field, look at the POI value. If the POI value is X, you go down the next step. I use a CDO to track when's the last time a particular POI value had that value. And if the POI timeout CDO has the field engaged recovery linked to this record. This is a date and time field. So if the engaged recovery date and time field has a date stamp that's within the past 24 hours, we gracefully exit them. We do nothing. We don't want to create leads who have had the same POI value within the past 24 hours because we don't want to spam sales reps with new leads. Only give them an additional lead if they've done something for either the same POI or a different POI within the 24-hour period. So if they do, for example, engage recovery, don't create any additional leads for engage recovery. But if within the 24-hour periods they do something else that's, let's say, invisible recovery, then create a lead for that. And there's again a CDO that keeps track of that. So how does it do that? So when, let's say, your engaged recovery is, sorry, when your POI is engaged recovery and the CDO tracker for engaged recovery is not within the past 24 hours, meaning that it's either really in the past or it doesn't exist, it goes down the no path. The no path goes down here. All that this is a form submit action that writes a field, uh, the value POI to the field called POI. It's just a mapping. Um, and then a form, you know what? I need to show you. Give me 1 second. I will bring it up. Okay, so this is the form that actually does it. I call it POI timeout by date and time. Two fields, email address and a POI field. Under processing, we have things that run conditionally. The condition is that I look for specific POI values. So when the POI form field from here gets a specific value, so let's say engaged recovery. Is this engaged recovery? No, this is invisible recovery. Is this one engaged recovery? Yes, this one is engaged recovery. So conditionally, when POI form field is exactly engaged recovery, then you execute this. So you write to the POI timeout tracker for new leads custom object. Key field is the email address because that's pretty much it. And you just do a date stamp. So you put a date stamp into the field corresponding to the value that's sent. So there's different fields on that CDO, and we match which field we're writing to conditionally based on the value that's coming in, and that just creates a date stamp. And then I read using these steps if that date stamp is within the past 24 hours. So that's how I do my timeout for that. So we don't spam our sales reps, but at the same time, we do send them leads that did something, either something else in less than 24 hours, or if after 24 hours they did something different with the same POI. Anyway, we then send them off to their merry way. So things we do: clear out the lead ID. Why we clear out the lead ID is because we don't want to conflate this lead ID with the past, because the intention is create a new duplicate. So this one doesn't apply anymore. So we clear it out. So on the contact field, we just clear out the thing called lead ID. We do data enrichment. We do a combo fix. Currently, this is geography. So for example, US versus USA versus United States versus United States of America. We consolidate that into whatever value Salesforce accepts. We then run lead scoring. We run that in isolation. There's different ways of doing that. Lead scoring is a completely separate topic, along with lead nurturing, etc. Truncate large text field. What are we doing here? So large text field like notes or messages or whatever, it'd be nice to send to Salesforce. However, values more than 5,000 characters result in an integration error. We want to truncate it. The way I truncate it is I use a contact washing machine, and then I do a regex extract, and this is what we do. So bracket, bracket, question mark, lowercase s, brackets, exponent, whatever. This is the thing that's above the number 6 key on your keyboard, period, squiggly, 0, comma, 4997, squiggly, close bracket. No, I'm butchering these terms. Please correct me in the comments what this should be. But in any case, the output is from notes. I do a regex extract back into notes, so I'm overwriting this. So anything beyond 4,997 characters is truncated. And I do this to guarantee that what we have carries over. If you really want to know what's in there, you can go into the profiler of a person, and there you'll, if I can recall correctly, you'll see more than this. So that's another reason why people should be using profiler. Anyway, this is just a safety to guarantee that people will go into Salesforce. Wait 5 hours, 0.05 hours. This is so that the lead scoring can finish doing its job. And I'm putting this here instead of immediately after is because I want to give as much time as possible for this to run because it's in a separate parallel program. So I'm making the assumption here that by both running this and then giving it the minimum possible time for it to execute, that by the time I run integration, this is already finished uh, running through and a lead score has been assigned. This is just doing create lead, very simple, different companies, different field mappings, but create action on the lead object. You do your standard mappings, you return the lead ID back to the SFTC lead ID on the contact. That's it. I then have a separate CDO that keeps track of all the different leads that we have been created, that we're creating, and all the different values that were sent at the time that we created those leads. This is a legacy system, but it's just for us to keep track. Clear out notes, very important. Why do we clear out the notes? What are we doing here? We're setting a blank, the notes field. Why? Is because let's pretend we have two campaign responses. One for contact sales and another one for, I don't know, you're downloading some random PDF or whatever. The notes that you put into the contact sales, if you don't clear that out, they'll be included in all subsequent activities and then send out to Salesforce as well. So after you finish creating the lead here, that's already in Salesforce. There's no reason to keep it here because otherwise you risk that being conflated with other campaign responses that people might do. So that's why you clear it out. You should really clear out anything else. If you have any referral fields or like referred by, whatever, all of that, that should all be cleared out immediately after you've successfully sent it to Salesforce. Next, what I do is remove from being processed. So where do I add this? So being processed. Okay. I add everyone here to the being processed list if you pass the initial checks, because on my marketing error control list, I want to see a non-zero number for everyone being processed. If this remains non-zero for an extended amount of time, it means that people aren't successfully exiting the program. But just before they're exiting the program, I want them to be removed from that list. So I want that number to go back down to zero. That is the reason. Then afterwards, it's just a simple exit step. I think I don't even need this, but the reason why I have this step is because when I go into the program exit report, I can see what's the name of the step that people exited on. Now that I'm seeing here, I need to remember to mention the program pending members report. What is this? So keep in mind, this is a program canvas running contacts through, not CDOs. It's the other one that has CDOs. This is a queue. So when you have the allow context to exist in multiple steps in the canvas, when you have a check mark here, no one goes into the program pending members report because instead of going here, they just get added to the campaign canvas simultaneously. And you can exist in like 2 or 3 or infinite number of steps. By not having a check mark, if a contact is on the program, instead of being added to the beginning, they are instead added to the queue. They call it the program pending members report. There is no limit to the number of times you can be in the queue. This just says first in, first out is when you finished exiting the program, if you're on the queue, now add you to the beginning, whatever it was here. So keep this in mind. When two things are trying to add you simultaneously, it'll be a race condition. Whichever one is first adds you. The second one is going to add you to this queue called the program pending members report. Okay. There are certain considerations. If you need to know more, please let me know.
but otherwise you can comment below what you think about this. But I think this is great. This differs from the campaign canvas and program builder in that on those, if you have a contact that's trying to be added while being already on the canvas, instead of being put into a queue or being added simultaneously, they'll simply be ignored, and then you lose that. So if you need to be processed again, even though you're running through, you won't be. But program Canvas is unique that it does have this queue. This is really powerful. This is useful. Thank you very much. This existed since day one. This is great. Okay, so moving on. So let's say that you are added to here through the form that I showed you earlier. Not this one, but I believe it is this one. Yes. So when you got added with this, you are being added, and then your campaign data is expected. So filter, 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 add you to a shared list, remove you from CRM data, get invalid because you've already passed this. You go down the no step, you are valid, you are not invalid. So that's where you remove you. We have a looping counter. If you're running through this program multiple times, I just increment by one. What is the program that you are looping through? I have different things to tell me what you're being looped through. So this is really useful for me for diagnosing. I also have this in here. So anybody that's looped through anything more than 50 times, I need to take a look at that. If it's legitimate, that's fantastic. But if it's not legitimate, I need to take a look at why, fix the root cause, and then prevent looping. Next, campaign data is expected, obviously here. So it is, so it's not no, so it's a yes. So we do the next step. 18 character campaign ID cleanup, remove white space. So we do a regex extract. We do the first 18 characters of this. Um, Please use 18 characters and not 15. 15 characters are subject to upper and lower case. You need to get those right. With 18 characters, the last three characters are a checksum of the first 15. By having that checksum, you don't need to worry about upper and lower case of the first 15 characters. But to make everything easier, just always ever use 18 character Salesforce IDs. If you're in Lightning, you don't have a choice. But if you're older, then it gives you by default the 15 character, and you have to use a custom field to get the 18 character or whatever. So you use the 18 character, just save yourself the hassle. Um, Campaign ID to campaign name. This is the thing that that uses the lookup table. So I previously showed you the integration that brings us the campaign ID to campaign name and the campaign ID to campaign type. So here we're using the campaign name. So in case it's blank or if it's wrong, this is where I'm using the most updated values, and I'm using this update step data. It just says um, write into the campaign name field on the contact the value from the lookup table based on the last SFDC campaign ID, and that's used in the lookup table, and that just gives you the update. Next, I have a process for writing to the original campaign field. So I want to know what was the very first campaign that someone's ever done. So if we don't have that, we check to see if they do have information to write to the original campaign fields. Goes down the yes path. It just says grab your last SFTC campaign ID, grab your last SFTC campaign status and the name and write it into the original fields. If it's blank, that's it. After that, we just remove you from an error control list. This list is used here if there's no, if for example you're missing either the ID or the status, you get sent to this little cluster over here that is like an error control for that. You can kind of do your own thing. You don't need to do this, but this is just error control for that scenario where you are missing either the lead ID or the status. Next, truncate large text, same thing as this one over here. I needed to copy it because I can't recycle it because it's a different path. Same thing, combo fix with fixed geography, has community status. This is redundant because generally it checks for here. as campaign. Okay, I think in the scenario where if it says um, has original campaign fields, so let's say the first one was correct, but then the new one coming in isn't correct, this one here would then check for that, and in that scenario would reuse the same cluster, and then you would get a report here, like here or something, that something is wrong. So this is the error control for that scenario. So in case you goofed up your form submit or form processing steps, or you did something wrong here, you forgot to fill in a value, this would catch that. Next is we have our enrich. And this is where we have our bread and butter. This is where the magic happens. This is the concatenation. So first thing is you need to create a dedicated temporary field to store the concatenation. That's going to be the key field for the CDO that you're creating. So I have a dedicated field just for that temporary purpose. I call it the most recent concatenated campaign ID-email. And what we're doing is we're doing a compose action into this field. The source field doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You can select anything you want, even address two. That's irrelevant. Um, what we're doing is so IntelliSense, when you do control space, it brings up, do I need to do it again? Why isn't this? There we go. Takes a while. You can add fields to this. All this is just a field merge. So you see the syntax is a $sign squiggly, the API name of the Eloqua fields, and then squiggly that represents a field merge. So we field merged the last campaign ID. Actually, it's called the last SFTC. It's literally this one. So this is the display name field, last SFTC campaign ID field. But on the system, it's called this, C underscore SFTC last campaign ID, yada, yada, yada. So we're taking this, we're putting a dash, and we're putting the email address of the contacts. And this creates the concatenation. Now, what this allows us to do is to have one campaign CDO per contact. So if a contact has two campaign responses, they will be represented as two separate CDO records. But if they do multiple things against each campaign, they won't cause multiple CDOs to be created. It'll be stored within that same CDO representing a campaign. So it's one campaign response per contact. That is what you get by doing a concatenation between the campaign ID and the email address. And it doesn't really matter if you concatenate the email address first, then the dash, then the campaign ID. I don't think that matters. For me, because I want to report alphanumerically on campaigns rather than people, that is why I put the campaign ID first in the concatenation. Please write in the comments below what are other ways that you can configure a key field to make this whole thing make sense. I think it might be a long conversation or longer conversation than what the comments allow you to type. But I'm curious to know what are the key fields for your CDO-based integration and why. In any case, for me, I use this campaign ID dash email address, and I compose it into a field here, which we'll then use in a second. Next is I use a form submit to then use that concatenation and then create a CDO using that as a key field. Tamina Christensen, Stephen Strike, please, please, please give me an update rule or an action step that allows me to create or update CDO records without having to use a form submit. This has been a really long, outstanding feature request, I think with not a lot of upvotes, but people back when in 2013, when I was there, were still surprised that there wasn't a way to do this without having to do a form submit. Reasons why you do not want to do a form submit when you do a system action to do things like this is because form submits can show up in Profiler and salespeople look at Profiler, and you don't want to see a whole bunch of system form submit actions in Profiler because that confuses legitimate activities. And then salespeople don't use Profiler because all they see is junk. It's like, oh, I don't have time to filter through this. That is why you don't want to have system form actions to show up in Profile. Now, caveat to that. If you have a form submit that all it does is it writes to a CDO like this will not show up in your contact activity log and therefore not in Profiler. Why is because you're only ever writing to CDOs. Even though you're mapping the key field of the email address, even though by doing that you're creating CDO records that automatically map back to the contacts, despite that, for whatever reason, this does not result in a form submit to show up in the activity of a contact. But as soon as you do anything touching the contact, either update context with form data or update context with custom values, anytime you touch any one of these steps, that does cause the form submit to show up in the activity log of the contact and therefore the uh, in Profiler. One thing you can do if you want to trick the system to not show this up in Profiler, and you do need to write to the contact fields and to the CDOs, is you can have something like this. So I will show you how to trick it. So you will have a new field. So you do test at test.com, or you can do junk at whatever. Doesn't matter. What you're doing here is you're then saying that you're overriding. So this single line text is just really this. That's a better description of it. If you have this at the very bottom of your processing steps, and it needs to be at the very bottom because it's top down order. By having this at the very bottom, and then you're overriding and you're writing to the contacts, whatever, doesn't matter. You can update something. It really doesn't matter. You can do, I don't know, address one, you do set to value, I don't know, AB, whatever, doesn't matter. As long as this is at the very last step, even if it doesn't update it, because you're doing this difference of a key field override, you're now saying the activity of this form submit is now going to be associated with this contact record rather than the one that's going through here, because those ones up above are mapping the email address field to the email address. So let's say your contact at company.com, that's going to be successful, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be successful. That's going to be successful. That's fine. You're now mapping this email address. That's fine. Your person at company.com is going to be successfully mapped. That's fine. But at the very last step, you're tricking Eloqua by saying to Eloqua, doesn't matter what you've done above. All that matters is the last step. And now this junk record, this junk at hi.com is going to have the activity of the form submit against its contact record instead of this other one, because only one person can be associated with the activity of the form submit. In one instance of the form submit, you can't associate that submission action to multiple contacts simultaneously. It must be one. And this is how you trick it to hide it. So for those asking, how do I not have form submit activities in my profiler? This is a way of doing it. Again, the other way is just don't have steps that touch the contact. If you only have form processing steps that update the CDO, it will not show up in the activity and you won't have to worry about it. One of the other reasons why I put system in the name is because if you run reports on forms and you're reporting that to your C-level person, whomever, filter out any forms with the word system in it, and then you don't need to manually filter out all the forms. Anyway, uh, going back. So this is a system form submit that takes the concatenated company dash email address, takes all these other fields. You need to have the email address because you need to create the mapping for the CDO to the correct person. You need to have the last specific campaign ID because you need to work with that. And you need to have the status, really important. The name, I use lookup tables to automate that. I'm just doing this for expediency. The other thing that's cool here is I'm using the UTM campaign, UTM medium, and UTM source, and you're noticing how I'm updating to the most recent. I have automations on the GCS CDO to take from the most recent into the original if the original is blank. I also have a POI, and then I have another thing that I'm writing, a static value of yes to the GCS CDO field called new input from form. And then the large text field, I'm not doing this yet, but we will in the future. So next thing is after we've created this CDO, we are going to check and see if it's actually been created. The way I do this is, and there's limitations with this, when there's no GCS CDO records for that contact that exists before, then this works reliably. This just says, see if the concatenated campaign email contains an @ sign. If it does, then go down the yes path. If no, error out. This doesn't work if you already have a record and you're creating a new one to it, like a second one or a third one, because as long as you have one and it's correct, then it'll go down the yes path. It can't check for subsequent ones. So, I mean, something is better than nothing, but I don't have a better way of error controlling to determine whether or not this form submit AppSep successfully fired or not. I know that if, for example, you have fields and you have field validation, and let's say you only allow it for 30 character or 35 characters by default, and your concatenation is larger, if you forgot to uncheck this and you do a form submit, and the form submit fails, the person will get stuck in this step, and then you'll need to figure out why they got stuck. You'll see the error message saying error set by app step or something like that, and you'll need to figure out why. Usually it's because you forgot to remove the validation to that form field. That's usually why. Anyway, moving out, clear out notes and miscellaneous. So what are we doing? So we're nulling out notes again because we don't want to conflate it with future responses. Partner stuff, partner stuff, referral stuff, partner stuff. Last of C campaign ID, yeah, because we don't want to conflate it with future stuff. And status, I can even add the last SFTC campaign name here. I think on purpose I chose not to do that because just in case for diagnostics purposes, I want to see what was the last campaign ID that this was run with. By leaving the campaign name, it's totally safe, and I can have that there. So I think that was done by design. Next is this step here. So this is, I need to open up a new program canvas to show you what that is about. So add linked records to program. That's the next step. What does this do? When you say this, you're running the contact through here, and all of the linked CDO records to this contact are being, or from this CDO, you are adding to a program of your choice. A list here filters only programs that are working with that CDO. So in this case, I'm going to be adding to a step. So a thing to consider about the step is when you use this step, all of the linked CDO records of the contact running through will be added to that program, not just the one that you just created, but all of them. So then you need to create rules to work with the fact that the ones that are added just because of the nature, the ones that don't need work to be done on them, you need to exit them gracefully. You don't want to resend them through integration needlessly. So I'll get to that in a second. Next is a looping counter. Very similar to the one here. In this case, is GCS. So because it's made it to a global campaign store, I put a value of 1. I increment it. You can have different ways of doing it. I have a fault field manager. In theory, I should put the fault field manager here as well. This is just a quick preview. Wouldn't it be nice if in one field you can summarize through automation all the different things that are wrong with the contact? That's another video that I want to create, but this is what that program looks like. And when I bring up my contact, I have in here faults 1, 2, 3 because from before I put in that. But this is where you would have error messages spit out. Everything that's wrong with the contact would be concatenated with a delimiter into the fault field. So this just automates for you everything that's wrong with the contact. That's what that does. Next is clean up, remove from being processed because I want to make sure that This one here is 0 again after success. And then we remove from campaign data as expected. This is the thing that is up here. So when we add from a source that does include campaign information that I use as a router here, I want to remove it so that for next run, it's not on the list. Um, because this is good in theory, I also include this here because, for example, if for whatever reason the content gets stuck in here and I remove from the canvas, it hasn't made it to this step here to be removed. So the next time they run through, they might still be on this list. So for that reason, I always remove from this list for when you have a without a campaign, because I want them to go down the no path here. Uh, that's the reason why. So that's a summary of the integration intake program. And again, this is my version of it. This is something that works for FlexPay. This might not work for you. Moving on to GCS. This is the program canvas that runs the CDO records through that we have generated through this form submit step right here. The stack on the left are checks and balances to make sure that we only run through the CDO records that need work to be done. So if you're running through and you don't have a link contact because the content was deleted, we delete. We don't care about CDO records that represent people that have been deleted. That's just cleanup. Delete CDO is we have a field that, let's say, through a list load, I put a value of 1 into this delete. And then if it's, or yes, into the value of delete, and then I run those CDOs through. If they run through, they hit the step, they say, this is deleted. This is more of a manual thing. This is a way to help me move CDOs through a flow after I've uploaded a list. Usually it's like something has gone wrong, and I use this as something to help steer me to delete the CDO records. If let's say I have a lot, if I have like less than 10, I just manually delete them. But if more than 10, I use a list load to, and then this to help me with automation for deleting. Next, exclude from processing. Um, this is from a while ago, actually, in another company. There was a scenario where, and I remember this, and this is why I put it in here. Things got processed, things didn't complete, finished running through integration. Um, they didn't want to remove the records that somebody has done something in the context of a campaign from the GCS CDO, but at the same time, they don't want them to be processed either. I it could have been that the person has asked through their GDPR rights to be removed from processing. Um, so then I had to put a value of 1, so we can't process them. It could have been that. I forget the exact reason, but this just gives you another build. So instead of just straight up deleting, we just hold them for processing. Maybe we want to process them later, later time. I, who knows? This gives you the ability to do that. This next one here, this is the main one, the new input. So from the form submit here, or I'm saying new input from form, anytime anyone runs through here, the main intake program, and they have campaign information, that is always new information. So because it's new, we always want to process them. So new input is yes, they go down and we run them through. Next one is if they have any faults. So I have a separate fault field handler just for the GCS CDO. So if the GCS CDO field fault is a non-blank value, we run it through. The expectation is by the time they have a success, we clear their faults so they're blank. So if they're blank, so means that they're not blank, then they gracefully exit. Last one is if the campaign type is not found. So um, I closed that window already, but if the lookup table doesn't include a campaign ID for the campaign that's running through, we output a value of not found, and that not found is a type of fault that then we run through until it's successful. Finally, if it's not neither of one of those things, you gracefully exit. And this is how you prevent needless running through of CDO records through integration. You have to have these controls. If you don't, you'll clog up integration, and your outbound queue will be really backlogged. You don't want to deal with backlogs, so you want to prevent it here. Eloqua's ability to process this is many, many orders of magnitude more efficient than the ability of Eloqua to Salesforce integration to deal with the volume of needless integration, right? So just filter it first before sending it through integration. Don't rely on integration to not update anything that doesn't have a change. Just don't send integration in the first place. It's a limited resource. Use it wisely. Okay. Next one is campaign ID in the pick list. So the campaign ID that we have linked to the CDO record, is it a real campaign ID or did someone fat finger it? Did someone mistype it? And we do that by comparing it if it's in the pick list. This is the pick list that we import from Salesforce on a schedule. So it needs to be real. So check if this campaign ID is a real campaign ID and it's real because it came from Salesforce, right? If it's not, write a false field, says campaign ID non-pick list into the false field using this update rule. Add to this here, this is your internal personal ROI as an administrator for your automation is doing work to uh, retry things that would have not made into Salesforce otherwise. And then there's retry mechanisms once per day. There's a way that we can retry different scenarios for faults and whatever. Let me see if I can open it just to quickly show you. So all of these need to be simultaneously uh, true for this to hit. So campaign blank, da da da. You can see what this does. And then these are all or statements. So I'm just going to go through them to give you ideas. Maybe there's different things. Basically, I build this out. If I find a scenario that I need to account for, I just add a two here. It's really that simple. Just automate your way out of mundane work. If it's repeatable, just automate it, right? It's really simple. All right. Moving on. So this is the main processing. Now, I'm not going to show you this just yet, but this is the meat and potatoes of how we process the GCS CDOs. Assuming the processing has completed, we have determined what is the highest level campaign status for the campaign that someone has done. So in the event of multiple things, let's say you've registered and you've attended, which of those two is the highest value for your campaign type that it's put in the output field, and the output field is then we check here to see if your output campaign status output field has a value. If it is, move on. This update rule just puts a value on a control field that says running through integration. GCS running through integration. Do I have this here? I'm pretty sure I have this here. This is just a control field to tell me that someone's running through integration. So I want to have that be 0 at the end of the day and not just stay as 1. Next one is has lead ID. So if the CDO, not the contact, if the CDO has a lead ID already, we want to update the lead. This is actually linking I can't see the field mappings here, but this is updating from the linked contact records fields onto the lead. And then we're saying it has campaign member. If they have a campaign member, we're updating the same campaign member. If not, then we're doing additional things to, let's see here. Contact has a contact ID. If they do have a contact ID, we create the member for the contact, right? In general, the reason for this is because even if they have a lead ID, we want to create the campaign member on the contact rather than the lead. We don't want to duplicate the campaign member both on the lead and the contact. That's the reason for that. Okay. So in general, this is checks and balances. Again, this works for FlexPay. You will have a different way of doing things. Do you create campaign members against your leads? Do you create campaign members against contacts? Do you do it for both? Not recommended because of duplication of ROI for campaigns, but that's entirely up to you. Whatever that structure is, you need to structure this area, this error control, to meet your business needs. At the end of the day, once you've accounted for everything, you need to check, do you have a campaign member ID returned from Salesforce? This I just use as a check and balance. Because this is app-based integration, if you are creating a campaign member, the sheer fact that this is successful and it doesn't get held here in an error stub, or you're not routing it to an error, the sheer fact that it goes down to this path means that it's successful. So you can assume that it has been successful. I just like to be extra careful, and also because I'm set in my ways from the old legacy integration. So I just have this as a check. If it's successful, we clear out the faults and we do some other additional checks. If not, again, in theory, they should never go down here because they'll get stuck here on this step. So this is just the theoretical that goes down here. Now let's move on to what actually is this GCS main processing. So what do we actually do here? So we go to data tools, we go to update rules, I have GCS main processing. This is what we do. I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. This video is going to be a few minutes longer than my original recording. Set the currently being processed for one. This is slightly different than the currently running through integration, but the currently being processed is in reference that the update rule is running processing. Now, this update rule or update rules in general and Eloqua don't happen instantaneously. So if, for example, or specifically, set the campaign status output field to blank, that immediately triggers an error condition on one of the things I'm looking for. So let's see, new input campaign um, campaign. Yeah, so campaign status output. So let's say this one will be triggered because um, I am in the sequence of events setting a blank on purpose to the output field, right? So by saying currently be processed as one, uh, I'm also checking here that this one here is checked. So currently be processed, not exactly one. So basically, this won't become a one if the currently being processed is a one. So I'm preventing a false positive on my error control by setting this first to one, and then at the end here I am saying set the currently be processed one for yes to blank. I am then clearing that. So after the processing is complete, then this can go and check and see if there's an error condition. So set the new input so to blank because on here on this intake program we're setting a new input to yes, so new input from contact. As we're actually consuming that, it's no longer new, so we're setting that to blank. Here we have the lookups for the campaign ID to campaign name and the campaign type. Currently, I'm not doing anything with the campaign type because we don't need it right now, but in the future, theoretically, we would. Next, we have a stack of things. Now, there's two stacks here. You're going to notice that the first one is uh, we're looking at conditionally if the input field is one of these values. So set the name of the field, let's say sent, to a value of sent. So it's just the value goes in the same name field, conditionally if the input has this value. And there's one row for every different type of campaign status value that there is. Next, we have the outputs. So now we set in the second half, we set the campaign status output field to a specific value, conditionally if, uh, and we look at each one of the different fields corresponding to the different statuses you could be in. So conditionally set it to that based on if the field with the same name has a value of the same thing. The way this works is a brute force. So even if you do all of the responses that are listed here, you have sent, open, click, submit for, you do all of those things. The thing that is at the very bottom will be the winner because it's a brute force. Remember, it's a top-down order of execution. So whatever's at the bottom is going to be the winner of what you've done in the context of that campaign. All right, so next moving on is here we have the ability to write the original UTMs from the most recent.
and then you can include that in integration. So if you have your Salesforce administrator create custom fields in the campaign member object, you can have your UTM source, UTM medium, UTM campaign, UTM term, and also a large notes field on the campaign member, and you can write that to the campaign member from the contact record. All right, so the last three fields here in the bottom, this is specific to us. This is just a legacy thing that if the campaign type is related to a webinar, we want the specific uh, fields to represent what status of the webinar people have done, and then we write that over to the lead. There's a specific field in the lead that is unique to us. I foresee in the future we'll be doing away with that, but you do you. Maybe you might have other requirements. I don't know, partner referral or something else, whatever you want. You can get creative with this, but in general, this is the update rule that does the bulk processing of everything on the CDO. Now, since I've shown you everything else that already happens to it, I'm going to show you, I mean, on the GCS program canvas, I'm going to show you the CDO itself. So first thing of note is I was made aware that there are Eloqua clients that are in the oil and gas industry that they have like 30 contacts in their contact database, and yet they still use Eloqua. So those 30 contacts might not generate a lot of activities. Um, Similarly to us, this is our volume. So depending on what type of industry you're in, this might be normal or not. This goes back in line to the 20 million CDO records globally. And you need to be cognizant of that. If you are a high volume company generating a lot of campaign responses, you'll quickly run into that. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to show you the custom object record services. Now, again, Tamina Christensen, Stephen Strike, if you guys can please do something about this. This is very legacy, but this is extremely powerful. Um, the only thing I do with this is I save the lead ID back to the contact because from the CDO program canvas, I create the lead, which gets stored on the CDO record. And then from the CDO record, this is the only way that I can write it back to the contact. There is no other way in Eloqua that I can do it. I can't throw an update rule on the program canvas that there's no operation that I can do on there. This is the only place in Eloqua where from the CDO record, the values can be written back to the contact. It must happen through the CDO record services. So either it would be nice to have update rules that can do that or some other mechanism. So pretty please as a request. Um, Other requests are if you look at all the different things you can do in here, um, add or remove from shared list, aka contact groups. Contact group is an L9 terminology. You can send an email or whatever, like all these different things, including sending an email, sending batch email, run integration rules. These are very powerful things. I don't want to be restricted to only ever being allowed to do this in CDO record services. Um, the reason is because they run every 15 minutes. And I know there's a bug that's been resolved, but if it, the backend service to process them once the 15 minutes is up, it runs in batches of 5,000. And as it runs through 1 to 5,000, if it's like on number 2,000 and the CDO that you're editing is number 1,000, it's already gone past that. Um, the bug was that it doesn't consider the modification to that CDO as being a new modification because it considers the end time of the processing of the batch as 5,000 as being the point in time that it considers any new modifications for the next 15-minute cycle. I'm pretty sure that's been fixed, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
So just little quirks with CDO record service. Oh, and another thing is that uh, either under new data or modified data, the processing steps, unlike update rules, they're executed sequentially. So, for example, if I'm saving to this contact table and I am also changing some value or whatever in another step, if I need to then conditionally do a third or a fourth step based on the fact that the first or second processing step has run, I can't do that because it all happens simultaneously. So with update rules, you can, but with these processing steps in here, you cannot. Um, I was told this is working as per design. I find that as an inconsistency in terms of different Eloqua processes. It's like the person that wrote the processing steps for CDO record services isn't the same person that engineered update rules, and that results in different expectations without documentation, and that's just not ideal. So for that and other reasons, I just asked that if there's some development that could be done to this part of Eloqua, it's extremely valuable. Please don't make it go away. Just give it a new interface, and with the Redwood experience, whatever you want to do, uh, this needs to have some love applied to it. Please and thank you. Um, yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. I'm just going to show you the CDO record fields. There's not much to it because I've shown you everything else, and I'm going to summarize at the very end. So these are all the fields for the entire CDO. Again, the key is the concatenated campaign dash email address. You're also going to notice that the email address field is the email address. This is what allows me to map the GCS records back to the contact. So, for example, I don't need this one. I don't need that one. I don't need this one. So if I go to contact, bring up mine. In the linked records, this is in the linked CDO records, I can select global campaign store, and it shows me all of the CDOs linked to my record, right? I can click into it and I can see all the fields. I can see the concatenated. I can see the lead ID return. So this is the CRM ID for that. I can see the campaign member ID is returned. I can double click on it. I can control C. I can then paste it into the URL after the as salesforce.com, whatever, and go directly into that record that was created. Um, there's a false field somewhere in here. I can see if and you basically all this information is visible. False, here's false. Um, What are some other interesting things? You can see your UTMs would not have made it into Salesforce. Is basically if you encounter an error, didn't on the first time go successfully into Salesforce. If a C-level person asks you, well, you spent all this time developing CDO-based integration, what value does it bring? By engineering some field like this, you can say, well, here's a number of records that have a non-blank value to this field. This is all these this is the percentage of records that automation has accounted for that otherwise would have just not made it, right? So yeah, all the different fields. It's pretty cool to see it on here, and it's linked. You can report on it. You can create a segmentation on it. Again, like I create an error control center for contacts based on the fact that they're linked to CDOs that have a certain value or not linked to them. So that's the value of it. Um, Let me just make sure that I'm not forgetting it. All right, so I checked my notes and I think I've covered everything. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Um, this is a lot. This is not for everyone, but again, just to summarize, my goal is to share this information. I have nothing to hide. I've already removed the one thing that I found as an error from my last video. I'm not sharing anyone's email address here. I'm not sharing anything proprietary. These are just steps from a marketing automation tool. Uh, they don't really mean anything of their own unless you understand their context. You can shamelessly copy one for one verbatim into your instance. Please do, because what that means is that if I'm not the only one doing this, then if multiple people are doing it, then Eloqua will take notice and they'll say, aha, maybe we need to drive development of our product in this direction that people are going with. That's really what I'm trying to achieve. But why I'm doing this is because I need a forensic level of accountability for activities as tracked by Eloqua to then be represented in Salesforce. I don't want to be the person that C-levels go to and say, why did we lose this opportunity? Why did we lose this $2 million deal because this one contact record didn't make it at Salesforce because it got stuck in integration or whatever reason? I don't want to have that conversation. I dread it. And by having this level of automation, you can have that. You can have a forensic level uh, report and system where everything goes through, nothing goes through the cracks. And again, like my Marketo gripes, and in systems like Marketo, you just cannot have that. This does allow you to have that. Please comment in the in the comments below the video or on LinkedIn, or reach out to me. I've shown you my LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on there. Yeah, I hope you find something valuable in here. And then there's 3 other videos that I need to make in this series. I look forward to seeing you in those upcoming ones. Thank you very much. Bye. One last thing I wanted to share, and this is a big request that didn't get a lot of upvotes in the ideas page. When you have a CDO record, you have this thing called custom object record history. If you click into it, you're not going to have anything. And the reason why is because this only includes the history from Program Builder, not from Program Canvas. This was extremely valuable from back in the days, but this is just an artifact now at best. I would there's no way to know what's the path the CDO record has took through a program canvas. That doesn't exist. So Tamina, Stephen, please, if you guys can resurrect this, it's fine if it's in the Redwood interface, but I very much would like to have this available to diagnose records or when building something to make sure they're flowing the right way, because the only other way to do it is by setting up a whole bunch of conditions and wait steps on my program canvas to make sure that the CDO goes down the right way. That's it. Thank you so much.